Hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for this episode of Diamond Insights TV that builds on many ongoing discussions that we're having in our industry more recently. About the role and the impact of digital in pharma and in healthcare overall. So my name is Nicole. I'm a consultant here at Aerodyne, and I'm joined today by Marco Rauland, which is a Vice President of Global Market Access and Pricing Strategic Planning at Merck. And he's also a key opinion leader in this particular space. So Marco, welcome, and thank you very much in advance for your time. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So to set the scene, Marco, I thought it would be a good idea to ask you first how you see digital fitting in with market access. Where do we think it adds value? And when we mention digital solutions, what do these really look like from a market access perspective?
Yeah, I think that's the key question. I think digital nowadays is everywhere, and it's also in market access. And I think some of the areas are not as advanced as maybe in other healthcare areas, but I think we see it more and more evolving in the market access space. And I think what's a nice way to look at it is if we follow the kind of 3 steps of a market access approach. I mean, the first one is always the value demonstration. I mean, you have to prove that your product is as good or better than other therapies. And I think here we talk about big data, real world evidence. Then we have the second big component, which is the price negotiation, where payers and manufacturers are sometimes sitting together and negotiate prices based on the value assessment. And I think here we are in the area of predictive pricing, predictive analytics, modeling. And then a third subsequent step is the contracting. And I think here we also see some very interesting advancements, for example, smart contracts, blockchain technologies. So I think there's a lot of interesting developments in this space. Maybe it started a bit later than with healthcare practitioners and patient-related digital, but we see this more and more in the market access space as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, honestly. And I think all of this sounds really refreshing, but also ideal to an extent. And we're seeing that digital can fit in across this whole, I guess, value chain of market access and pricing. And there are many solutions out there, right? We spoke about AI, we spoke about digital patient monitoring, for example, or analytics and modeling. But in your honest opinion, how much do you think we're currently implementing this in practice? Is it to the extent that we can, or what does the reality really look like?
I think at the moment it's a lot of pilots and behind the scene testing, I would say. I mean, I think we are most advanced, of course, in the real world evidence space, value demonstration. And here we have examples where, and this is more about, if you like the phase 1, the value demonstration, where algorithms help to compile and collect information from different data sources. I mean, traditionally you have just your clinical trial, but now you complement this more and more also with literature. And we have a lot of examples where artificial intelligence, machine learning help to compile information. So there, I think we are quite advanced. Then in the area of price negotiation, I think what has triggered and accelerated a lot of digital needs is the pandemic. We see more and more payer negotiations, virtual negotiations, and this was a change for quite a lot of participants, right? I mean, industry and payers are not prepared to negotiate virtually. I mean, and I think this needs different skill sets. So there, we also see quite a lot of advancements, and then also in the contracting space. I'm sure we will talk about it in more detail, but I think the challenge specifically with contracting is, if you like, the trust. I mean, specifically, and this is also a very interesting area, outcome-based contracting. I mean, who owns the data and who makes the decision if an outcome has been met or not? And here, I think I've read an article where it says it's more than 200 pilots on smart contracts as part of contracting. So I think we see more and more progress. But I think it's also, I mean, it takes some time until all participants are convinced and have the trust in digital means, specifically when we talk about artificial intelligence, algorithms. And I think there's always the black box fear. So how does it work? So I think we have advanced quite a lot in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and I'm sure it won't take that long until we see this really being part of the market access process.
I think you mentioned something really important there, Marco, which is the reality behind it all. And I'm talking specifically about the challenges of actually implementing even these solutions across this value chain. You mentioned a couple, for example, trust with contracting. Could you elaborate more on some challenges across perhaps these 3 key pillars of access that you drawed upon earlier?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, which is specifically in phase 1, which is value demonstration, specifically when we talk about real-world evidence and contracting, is data governance. It's data privacy. As I mean, we sometimes complement this with patient data, which is always, let's say, needs a bit more governance around it. And then deeper, of course, we want to protect the patient data. A big challenge, I think, specifically in the contracting, and I think there artificial intelligence, or specifically blockchain smart contracts, can overcome this issue is, as I said, it's the trust, right? Whenever you have an outcome-based agreement, the question is who makes the decision? Has the outcome been met or not? And then there's always the question, who is kind of owning the data, right? I mean, and so there, I think smart contracts provide a good solution. I mean, think about manufacturer and a payer agrees on a specific outcome, and then let's say the hospital is uploading the data in a smart contract environment, and if you like, the algorithm decides outcome met or not, and then triggers the payment. So I think that would solve quite a lot of the data privacy issues and also trust issues, as you had kind of overcome this with this blockchain-based smart contracting.
Okay, and how about across, I guess, pricing negotiations? I know we talk a lot about predictive analytics and modeling. What are some of the challenges that you foresee there, either for pharma companies or the payers themselves, and what could this mean for pricing in the future?
I'm not sure if this is a challenge, but it's a very good question. And I was thinking, there's, for example, we see more and more predictive analytics, and I just read an article where let's say the success rate of prediction should be around 90%. So if you look into historical data in Germany, you can obviously predict the outcome of the price negotiation by 90%. I mean, this is an amazing percentage, right? If you can really predict how the price outcome looks like. And then I was thinking, okay, how does the future look like? And maybe in 25 years, computers, algorithms are doing the negotiation, right? I mean, you don't need a human being anymore if, based on historical data, this is the prediction. And maybe then computers are doing negotiations. And you may say that's maybe a bit too much jumping the gun, but think about tenders where bidding is used, like in eBay auctions, the last second bidding. And these sort of methodologies and algorithms are already used in pharmaceutical tendering, specifically when it's about price, where machines are doing the bidding for the manufacturers. So I think this is not unlikely.
Completely agreed. And we discussed some of the challenges, and I know you have some solutions in mind, smart contracting seeming the most promising, benefiting everyone. Where do you see, I guess, particular areas where activity around digital is higher at the moment, or prioritized more so? So were you thinking of seeing solutions perhaps first in pricing and contracting, or more in value demonstration, for example? And which, in your opinion, are perhaps maybe some markets that are a bit more receptive to digital solutions, or have already made some steps towards including them in their process?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And maybe to start with the second part, I don't think there are specific markets. I think it's just, how willing are the different stakeholders to engage in discussions and set up their respective infrastructure. And I think that the pandemic has helped here a lot, right? I mean, as I said, payer negotiations are now virtual. And then I think the whole world has become more digital. And so therefore, I don't see specific markets. I mean, for specific approaches like smart contracts, the US might be the market where we see this first because we have all these different payers and stakeholders involved. But I can also see this in Germany with sick funds or in other countries with more regional or local payers. So therefore, I wouldn't pick a specific country. Yeah, I think where we already have advanced quite a lot is in the data analytic part, which kind of supports the value demonstration. And here are already studies being conducted, which, for example, shown how digital means can help, for example, to create and compile the literature for HTA submission, right? I mean, now there are 10 students sitting there and collecting one piece of literature after the other. And I think computers can do this in, I mean, a minimum amount of time, so which frees really humans to do the analysis and not so much invest so much time in the actual data collection. So therefore, I think this is an area where, you know, it's about the famous big data where we have advanced quite a lot. I know at the moment it's more on the discovery side and on in the R&D, but we also see it more and more implemented in the value demonstration part. As I said, how do you identify the patient which benefits the most from a drug? And the more data you have, I mean, the more informed you can make this decision to say, okay, it seems this patient subgroup benefits the most. And then you can complement this with literature. And I think also the beauty of big data is that you combine different data sources, which brings us a bit back to the black box. But I think this is where we see quite a lot of activity at the moment, as this is a very time-consuming part of the market access process.
Yes, of course. And the follow-on question I have on this, Marco, is actually about who is expected to make this investment into the digital solutions or the digital infrastructure. Every stakeholder, I anticipate, has a role in this. But being in the pharma side of things, how do you see this really panning out?
I mean, ideally, it's always a shared investment, but I see the value demonstration. I think the investment should come from the industry and where it's currently coming from. I mean, you launch a product and then you want to demonstrate the value of the product. I think then when we talk about like the second pillar, negotiation, I think it should be a joint investment also with the contracting, as these then the agreements between different partners. The first part, value demonstration, I think industry, and then this is where the industry is at the moment in investing. And I think the payoff is the time saving. I mean, it's also think about the HTA or discussions where you get then questions and you have 100 days where there's, okay, can we have a sub-analysis on this specific patient subgroup, or how does your product compare to another comparator? I think if you use big data and algorithm, you're much quicker in answering these questions, which saves time. So I think this is in the interest also of industry to get the products then quicker to market.
Yeah, and time is money in our industry as well. And you mentioned one of the key advantages of using digital, I guess, across this value chain. What other advantages do you see really pharma, regulators, or even payers getting out of really using digital solutions within the processes that they have between them?
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about payers and market access, I think the benefit is more data helps to make more robust and valid decisions, right? I mean, we also in market access, of course, talk a lot about real-world evidence, which has to be collected after some sort of conditional reimbursement. And here, I think it's also a benefit of these new developments, how to collect this data. And we are no longer talking about paper and pen patient records. And registries have been developed. So therefore, I think that that's also a big achievement, an area where we see a lot of improvements, which again, I mean, I think everyone benefits from. And I think at the end, it's to make decisions and also be able to revise a decision. I mean, there have been cases where the real-world evidence showed that the drug is even better than the clinical setting showed. So I mean, I think that that's also an important area.
Yeah, for sure. And we're thinking here, particularly, if I understand correctly, more about renegotiating after, say, for example, an original access decision or an approval decision.
Exactly. And as we see this more and more, I mean, as we know, controlled setting in a clinical trial is not a real life setting, and we see more and more register being built up, but there all these new digital technologies help. I mean, as I said before, you had to collect this data, and there was no infrastructure really to collect it. And now, I mean, the electronic patient records are uploaded. If you want to make, I mean, if you want to analyze the data, you can anonymize the data with blockchain technology. I mean, there's so much advancements compared to, I would even see 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. And a question that I have to this is, it's great to collect all this data, and it's great that we're reaping the benefits from it, or that we will reap the benefits of it in future. But do you almost see a change in stakeholder dynamics, or even the expectations that payers perhaps might have from pharma companies now, knowing that they have the solutions to gather a lot more data and do all these different comparisons?
I think the expectations haven't changed. I think it's more, as I said, it's more how to collect the data and to do it in a cooperative way, right? I mean, in the past, payers were saying, I mean, you have to set up the registries, you need to tell us. I think now it has changed, that this has been developed together. And it's also, again, about the trust. I mean, if you develop something together and both parties understand how the system, the analysis works, it helps to increase the trust. And therefore, I think all stakeholders benefit from these advancements. Maybe with the exception of what I said, this negotiation done by computers. I'm sure this will take some more time, but I think when it comes to evidence generation, analysis, contracting, these digital means definitely will help all stakeholders.
I have a question that relates perhaps to the reimbursement now of some of these digital solutions. Of course, we spoke about different stakeholders benefiting in a different way. We spoke about the investment, that we think they should come from a joint side. But do we ever see, I guess, a world where a digital solution is fully reimbursed by the state? And I'm thinking around digital patient monitoring, for example, that can feed into this market access loop. And we're seeing now, more importantly, some apps or even digital platforms that are slowly being reimbursed, if not even prescribed by payers. So how do you see that planning out in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we already have kind of cases where these solutions are reimbursed. I mean, an example is Germany, where now it has been piloted to reimburse apps, right? I mean, to treat them like a drug, and they are reimbursed. It's also pilot. But I think it makes sense, right? I mean, this is a different perspective on market access, as these are then tools which help the patient and the physician, let's say, to identify the right patients, diagnostic tools, then to maintain adherence and increase compliance by this. So I think that's an area on its own, but definitely I think payers are seeing more and more that these digital solutions and beyond the famous beyond the pill solutions are very important. And we see also more and more like bundle agreements where not just the drug is reimbursed or paid for, it's also the supporting digital tools like the apps which control, for example, inhalations in an inhaler, or if the right amount of the drug has been taken. But starts also much earlier with, if you like, with awareness programs, and we see this more and more being part of reimbursement packages, if you like.
Of course, so we'll have to wait and see. And on my final question, Marco, just taking a step back on our discussion today and seeing the current direction of our industry, how competitive things are becoming, but how everyone is trying to find the next shiny new thing. Do you think, in your honest opinion, incorporating digital solutions in market access specifically now is going to be a core differentiator for pharma companies, or is it going to be just a nice to have?
That's also a very good question. I mean, if we think about the therapies currently being developed, personalized medicine, I think the future is anyhow that pharma companies are working together to build up and set up these, call it infrastructure. I mean, think about clinical trials where we now see that companies are working together to identify the most appropriate patients for clinical trials based on biomarkers. And I see this also in the future of market access and evidence. I mean, it will be hard to find these patients which are suitable for your drug. So you think when industry joins forces here and you have databases which identify the right patients and which drugs work for this patient the best, this also helps you with the value demonstration. So I see it not as a competitive advantage. I see it as a necessity in the future that industry has to join forces to set this up. As I said, we see more and more personalized medicine, targeted therapies, where these digital databases, algorithm, machine learning will definitely help industry as such, and not a specific company.
Well, Marco, thank you very much for your time today and for providing your perspective on this topic. I think your insights have been extremely valuable in just understanding where digital fits in market access and what the future really looks like. So I'd say there's a lot to look forward to from all perspectives. Thank you all for tuning in today. Please make sure to scroll through our Diamond Insights TV miniseries focusing on digital in healthcare to get a comprehensive view of the topic and current trends in the space. Bye.